Picture this, a huge, like global concert hall. Every nation, every tribe, every single language is there. And instead of just one tune, it's this amazing harmony. Each group singing its own unique song, but all together in worship.
Wow, yeah. That's a powerful image.
Sounds beautiful, right? Almost like a fantasy. But what if it's more than that? What if it's a real vision with deep roots and, real meaning for us now?
Well, that's exactly what we're digging into today.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're exploring the source material you sent over, 009, A Vision Beyond the Horizon, Every Nation, Tribe, and Tongue-Worshipping.pdf. We're going to unpack this whole idea of global worship.
Yeah, this document, it looks at a specific vision in the Bible, Revelation chapter 7, verses 9 and 10. And it really connects that ancient picture to our world today, our interconnected world. It's not just theology, is it? It goes right to the heart of how we see our shared humanity, but also our differences, our really beautiful differences.
Exactly. So for you, the learner, our mission today is to pull out the key insights from this vision. Where does it come from? What are its core ideas? And what does it actually mean for us?
We're hoping to find some maybe surprising angles, things that might challenge how we usually think about unity and diversity.
Okay, let's start with that main image then. Revelation 7.910. This huge crowd, every nation, tribe, language, worshiping. What jumped out at you first from the source material about that scene?
Well, the first thing is just the scale. A multitude, it says. Nobody could count them. Huge. But just as important is how specific it is about the diversity.
Right, every nation, tribe, and tongue.
Exactly. It's not like a melting pot where everyone becomes the same. No, the differences are still there. And the symbols, they're rich too.
Tell me about those.
Well, the white robes, they suggest purity, right? Forgiveness achieved through sacrifice. And then the palm branches, those are ancient symbols of victory, celebration.
Oh, okay.
So you get this massive, diverse group, all united in triumph and purity. But they still have their distinct identities.
That's such a key point, isn't it? Unity and diversity, not uniformity.
Mm-hmm.
And the source material argues something fascinating here. It says, this vision kind of flips our usual thinking about mission.
How so?
Usually we see diversity as maybe an obstacle, something to overcome to get to unity. But this suggests this diverse worship itself is the ultimate goal, the highest expression of redemption.
That is a radical thought. It really is.
Yeah.
And think about today, with globalization, culture's constantly mixing this vision. It's not just some abstract idea for the future.
Right.
The document says it's a call, really, to rethink how we see cultural differences now.
It makes you ask, okay, what if these differences, the things we often see as barriers, what if they're actually the essential ingredients, the building blocks for a truly harmonious world?
It's a paradigm shift.
It really is. The source even suggests that the whole idea of missions might be changing, less about exporting one specific cultural version of faith.
And more about recognizing and celebrating all the different ways people connect with God.
Exactly that. Which leads to a question for you, the learner. When you encounter cultural differences at work, in your neighborhood, wherever you live, what's your first reaction?
Yeah, do you see them mainly as problems to solve? Or do you pause and think, okay, what richness, what value might be hidden in this difference?
Good question. So the source then steps back. It looks at the foundations for this vision. It traces this idea, unity and diversity, all the way from Genesis to Revelation.
Right. It paints the whole biblical story as sort of this unfolding narrative of human diversity, but with this constant underlying purpose.
Which is
for all of humanity to take part in God's plan. And that phrase, every nation, tribe, and tongue, it keeps appearing.
So it wasn't an afterthought.
Not at all. The source says it highlights that this inclusive salvation, it was wired in from the beginning. And it pulls out three core principles from this foundation. I found these really helpful.
Okay, let's break them down. What's the first one?
The first is unity and diversity. The document uses the analogy of an orchestra. You've got violins, trumpets, drums, all different sounds, different roles.
Right.
But together, under the conductor, they create something way richer, more complex than any one instrument could alone.
That's a great analogy.
So similarly, it argues, different cultures enrich the human story. These differences aren't bugs, they're features. They actually drive progress, innovation in work, communities, everywhere.
It's not about everyone playing the same note, but the harmony from all the different notes together. Okay, what's principle number 2?
Number 2 is purposeful participation. This idea that every single person, every individual has something unique to offer, a specific calling, maybe, or talents that fit into this bigger picture.
Everyone has a part to play.
Yeah, the source even links it to work environments, how mixing different skills and viewpoints is key for like creativity and solving problems. It's about valuing your own unique contribution, whatever it is.
That really connects. Okay, and the third principle.
The third one is called the redemptive journey. This frames the whole human story, including all the conflicts, the misunderstandings, the tough stuff, as a journey that's ultimately heading towards reconciliation, towards harmony. Challenges aren't dead ends. They're like, notes in the score, maybe dissonant notes for a while.
But they resolve.
Exactly. They resolve into something richer, more profound in the end.
So even the hard parts, the struggles in history or in our own lives, they're part of this bigger, beautiful composition. Okay, so the source then shifts. It looks at how this vision actually shows up in the real world. It calls it a vibrant tapestry of humanity. How does it connect the big idea to everyday life?
This part's really interesting. It points to all sorts of cultural expressions, music, art, stories, rituals, traditions.
These we see all around us.
Right. And it says these aren't just random customs. They're reflections of this deep human desire to connect to something bigger, like echoes of that biblical vision, maybe, different ways people try to express reverence, belonging.
So these cultural things are like different languages trying to say similar things about being human. And this vision gives us a way to understand that shared core.
Precisely. And the source argues that if we see the value in all these diverse expressions, it naturally opens the door for deeper dialogue across cultures, across faiths.
Yeah, I can see that.
When we really believe that every nation, tribe, and tongue has a place in this divine picture, those barriers we put up, they start to look a bit less solid, don't they?
They really do. It encourages more empathy, better conversations.
In all areas of life, yeah.
That's a good reminder that under all our differences, there's this shared humanity, this potential for connection. Does the source offer any practical advice, maybe for leaders?
Yes, definitely. The key takeaway for leaders is actively seek out different perspectives, intentionally bring them into the conversation.
Don't just wait for them.
No, actively integrate them. Create spaces where people feel safe, valued, and able to share their unique insights. The source says this actually turns potential problems into fuel for innovation and growth.
So it's not just a nice idea. It can actually make things work better in organizations, communities.
For sure. And the source also connects this vision to, like, the big global issues we face.
How so?
Well, if you apply this lens, it offers a really hopeful way to think about building global community. It highlights things like peace, justice, mutual respect. They become essential parts of this future where every culture contributes something valuable.
And it mentions art and music again here, doesn't it? Their power to bridge divides.
It does. It suggests that sometimes these creative forms, they can kind of bypass our intellectual defenses, our emotional walls.
Yeah, they connect on a different level.
Exactly. They tap into something deeper, more universal. So then the source circles back to Revelation 7, that symphony of nations culminating in global worship. It digs into that image of the huge crowd singing, "Salvation belongs to our God and to the Lamb." Where does it trace the origins of this symphony?
It goes way back.
Yeah.
Back to the harmony in creation itself. Then the discord, the disruption of the fall. And then God's consistent plan throughout history to restore, to redeem through Christ.
It's like this epic story arc.
Exactly. Moving towards this massive crescendo of unified worship.
And it brings up those three principles again.
Yeah.
Unity and diversity.
Right.
The ongoing covenant promise and this idea of sanctification, that process of becoming holy.
Right, a gradual transformation.
And Christ's role as the ultimate conductor of it all.
It stresses that every unique voice, every culture, adds essential richness, depth to the global song. And it challenges us, the learner, to really see and appreciate the unique melody in every single person we meet.
And there's this profound idea, too, that the whole journey, including the trials, the struggles, the times we feel refined by fire, that's actually preparing us, preparing humanity for this final amazing act of worship.
So the struggles aren't pointless. They're part of the score.
Integral parts of God's composition, yeah. And Christ is central, orchestrating everything, guiding even our weaknesses towards this greater purpose.
So how do we start living this global worship vision now? What does the source suggest practically?
It talks about consciously embracing diversity in our everyday lives, actively pursuing transformation personally and in our communities, and proclaiming this unifying message, not just with words, but maybe more importantly, how we live.
Moving it from just theology to like the how-to of daily life.
Okay.
The next section goes back to the very beginning again. The blueprint of universal worship, Genesis 1.28. What's the insight there?
The source reads that command, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth, not just as about having babies, but as the first invitation. The start of God's plan for a diverse, global family of worshipers.
Planting the seed for this worldwide tapestry.
Exactly, where every culture adds its unique thread to the song of praise.
So diversity wasn't an accident. It was built in from the start, reflecting God's own creativity. And then the Tower of Babel. How does the source look at that?
Well, it acknowledges the usual interpretation judgment on human pride trying to make a name for themselves. But it adds another layer.
Which is?
It suggests maybe it was also a strategic move by God, a dispersion, to prevent a kind of forced artificial unity, to preserve the space for genuine organic diversity to develop first.
Huh. So the scattering wasn't just punishment, but maybe a divine pause, a strategy to ensure the eventual unity was richer, more authentic.
That's the idea. Not wiping out diversity, but ensuring it could flourish before being brought together again. So the principles drawn from this early stage are...
Let me guess. Divine intent in diversity.
You got it. God planned it, delights in it, and wants our unique stories in the mix. And second, from fragmentation to unity and worship. Babel wasn't the end goal. It set the stage for a richer reunion later. Not homogenization, but harmony.
Okay. And the practical application today?
Basically, celebrate cultural differences where you are, actively build bridges across those divides, and live our faith in a way that reflects this journey from separation towards inclusion.
Be intentional about making diversity a strength, not just something we tolerate. Okay, then we move to Abraham. The promise of a multitude, Genesis 17. How does his covenant fit in?
This is presented as a huge turning point. God tells Abraham he'll be the father of many nations. The plan clearly expands here beyond just one family line. It goes global.
Setting the stage for that revelation vision.
Exactly. It's the start of fulfilling that promise. The call to Abraham wasn't just for him. It was kicking off this plan to bless all peoples.
And it links back to Genesis 1.28 again, that universal mission.
Yes. Reinforcing that fill the earth was always meant to be worldwide, crossing borders. Abraham's own life story, the challenges, waiting for Isaac. It becomes an example of faith needed for this huge vision.
And again, Babel wasn't about forcing everyone to be the same, but about allowing for that diversity that would later come together. The source mentions prophets too, Isaiah, Psalms.
Yeah, it points out how they echo this theme. Visions of all nations coming to worship God, offering praise. It's a consistent thread in the Old Testament. Then it unpacks blessing beyond borders. What's key there?
Well, first, that Abraham's covenant was always meant to be inclusive, aiming to extend God's salvation to everyone. Second, the big shift later on.
In the New Testament.
Right, from focus on physical descent from Abraham to a spiritual heritage based on faith in Christ, like Paul says in Galatians.
And third, this covenant becomes a model for us today, encouraging us to embrace multiculturalism, foster inclusive worship, build bridges through shared faith.
And that final gathering in Revelation, that's the ultimate fulfillment of the promise made way back with Abraham. All the barriers just dissolve in worship.
Okay, so the source then tracks a journey toward global worship, showing how the New Testament speeds things up. What's the big catalyst?
Well, it's Jesus, isn't it? His arrival changes everything. Salvation isn't tied to one place or people anymore. It's open to anyone, anywhere who believes.
And the Great Commission. Matthew 28, that's the explicit command, the invitation to every nation to join in. It's taking that Abrahamic promise and putting it into high gear, really reaching out to all the diverse peoples.
And then, Pentecost. Why is that moment so crucial for this global vision?
Pentecost is described as like the birthday of the global church. The Holy Spirit comes, the disciples speak in all these different languages.
A direct counter to Babel.
Exactly. It was this powerful sign that the gospel message was meant to break down barriers, reach every culture, every language. The early church wasn't uniform. It was this vibrant mix, united by the Spirit, not by culture.
So how does Revelation 7 fit in this whole story? From Genesis through Abraham, Jesus, Pentecost.
Revelation 7 is the grand finale, the glorious completion of the plan, that huge, diverse crowd before the throne. It's the ultimate reversal of Babel's scattering. Diversity isn't erased. It's redeemed, sanctified, celebrated, and unified praise.
Wow. So the New Testament really drives that ancient promise home. The source then gives us Revelation's panoramic view, focusing back on that unity and diversity image. What does it emphasize there?
It really highlights it as this glimpse into eternity where all our human-made walls, culture, language, ethnicity, they just melt away in God's presence. It unpacks the symbols again, white robes for Christ's righteousness, palm branches for victorious celebration.
Stressing it's not forced conformity.
Not at all. It's a joyful, voluntary celebration of diversity under God's rule. And it draws that sharp contrast again. Babel's diversity came from pride, led to division. Revelation's diversity is redeemed, leads to unity and worship. It's incredibly hopeful.
It really is.
Yeah.
And how can we live like citizens of this multicultural kingdom now?
It suggests, well, embracing our own diverse backgrounds and identities, actively building inclusive communities, trying to capture that Pentecost spirit, and engaging wholeheartedly in global mission and outreach.
Trying to make that future vision a present reality, step by step. Okay, next up, the ultimate vision, a display of cultural worship. What's the main point here?
The core idea is that true worship isn't about uniformity. It's meant to be expressed through the amazing richness of different human cultures. It uses the example of Western hymns versus African spirituals, different styles, but both are valid, deep expressions of reverence.
And this diversity isn't a problem. It's part of God's design. From Babel's scattering, allowing cultures to develop, to Pentecost's unifying power.
Exactly. So practically, it suggests building inclusive worship communities by embracing cultural authenticity, maybe multilingual services, cultural nights, collaborative music.
And fostering cross-cultural dialogue.
Definitely. Creating spaces where all these diverse expressions are truly welcomed and celebrated. Then there's a vision beyond uniformity, using that concert hall analogy again. What's the focus this time?
It really broadens the scope. Worship is cultural expression. It mentions not just hymns and spirituals, but Islamic calligraphy, Hindu festivals, Buddhist meditation, all pointing to this universal human need to honor the divine in culturally resonant ways.
And Revelation 7 is the picture of how this culminates unified diversity. White robes, palm branches show the shared salvation and victory, but the multitude itself is the diversity. It links this back to the story arc. Babel's division, then redemption, reorienting that diversity for unified worship.
So God takes the fractured diversity and weaves it into harmony. How do we cultivate this multicultural paradigm?
Through inclusive communities, real cross-cultural dialogue, and leading with authenticity, encouraging everyone to bring their whole cultural selves to worship.
The next section, a symphony of many voices, uses that music metaphor again. What's highlighted here?
It stresses the sheer scale and inclusivity of God's redemption. It reaches every cultural linguistic group, but also the unity of purpose. Despite all the different melodies, there's one common chorus honoring God and Christ.
And again, it points to diverse praise styles as cultural melodies in the global anthem, urging us to intentionally build that multicultural worship culture.
Right, through inclusive spaces, celebrating authenticity, fostering dialogue. Then we get to the flourishing of cultural worship. What's the emphasis here?
The key emphasis. This vision isn't about watering down traditions for unity. It's about exalting them, redeeming them, moving beyond just conversion to authentic, culturally rooted worship.
Using those music examples again, hymns versus spirituals, but extending it to other cultural forms. It reinforces unity and diversity based on Revelation 7 and that view of Babel as setting the stage for a diverse gathering.
And the implications go beyond just getting people saved.
Yes, it's about authenticity over assimilation, seeing the beauty in the whole global tapestry of worship that emerges when cultures are truly honored. Practically, it suggests things like integrating diverse music styles, using significant cultural rituals thoughtfully, fostering cross-cultural leadership and dialogue.
Taking concrete steps to value what different cultures bring. Okay, then it dives deeper into the journey from Babel to Pentecost. What's the main contrast?
Babel. Pride leads to division. Language becomes a barrier. Pentecost. Linguistic diversity becomes a bridge for connection, for spreading the gospel.
Highlighting the cost of self-reliance at Babel.
And Pentecost as the divine reversal, where God uses the very thing that divided language to unite. So, implications for today.
Well, the redemption of diversity. God uses the broken pieces. The global covenant includes everyone. The need for truly inclusive worship spaces, cross-cultural leadership, and the personal transformation that happens when we embrace this bigger picture. Seeing differences as potential bridges, not walls. Okay, the global church today, a living laboratory. What's the idea here?
It presents the worldwide church now as a kind of mini preview of the Revelation vision, a dynamic place where diverse voices are already blending in worship. It gives examples from Asia, Africa, Latin America, showing the spectrum of faith already happening.
But it acknowledges challenges too, right? Misunderstandings, language issues.
Oh, yeah. But it frames them not as roadblocks, but as opportunities. Opportunities for dialogue, collaboration, learning.
So how do we build this unified, multicultural community?
By cultivating those inclusive spaces, fostering that cross-cultural dialogue, and developing adaptive, sensitive leadership that can navigate this diversity well.
Recognizing the global church is already living this out. Then, the global church and the future of missions. Redefining the mission field. What's the shift?
It's moving away from just exporting Western models of Christianity towards empowering local believers to express faith authentically in their own cultural ways. It contrasts cultural imposition with the empowering vibe of Pentecost.
Embracing universal redemption from Abraham's promise to the Great Commission, inviting everyone in, meaningfully. What strategies does it suggest for culturally relevant missions?
Empowering local leaders is huge, contextualizing the gospel message so it really speaks to the local culture, and building real partnerships, not just top-down approaches.
And challenges are seen as chances to grow. Through training, dialogue.
Exactly. Then a new frontier of faith, looking at the global south. Examples.
Nigeria, South Korea, Brazil described as living laboratories, where local indigenous worship styles are reshaping Christianity. It gives specific examples of how they blend culture and faith.
And indigenous mission movements are rising with unique cultural sensitivity, leading to a two-way exchange with the West.
Yes, and there's a case study on Latin America's indigenous church. What does it highlight?
Contextual relevance, faith, speaking to local realities, authentic worship using local traditions, arts, and that vital sense of ownership and empowerment when faith fits the culture.
How do we cultivate this global, culturally rich church?
Empower local leaders worldwide. Foster inclusive environments locally. Build strong, equal cross-cultural partnerships. Use technology to connect and share these diverse expressions.
Okay, cultivating global worship. A new horizon for the gospel, the main idea.
The goal isn't a standardized conversion, it's fostering this rich tapestry of authentic worship, meaningful within each culture. Worship is personal and cultural.
Reorienting missions comes up again. Focus on translating the gospel culturally, empowering locals, encouraging cultural expression, fostering understanding, practical steps to make it real.
Create inclusive worship locally. Develop culturally aware leadership programs. Build collaborative cross-cultural partnerships. Use tech to connect and learn globally.
Then it gets personal. Participating in the symphony. What's the encouragement for the listener?
It asks you, the learner, how can you join in? Maybe cultivate cultural sensitivity, learn about other faith expressions, support missions that empower local culture, embrace diversity in your own church, pray for the nations.
Recognizing that small actions contribute to the bigger picture. Then, a hopeful harmony. Framing the vision as God's ultimate plan. Key takeaways.
It recaps the journey, Babel to Pentecost, setting the stage, summarizes the redemptive plan, the revelation vision, the theology, highlights how culture, music, art, stories, values creates the harmony.
And repeats those practical ways to participate. Sensitivity, supporting missions, local diversity, global prayer, valuing different expressions. Finally, worship as the destination, the ultimate message.
That worship is the end goal. Beyond evangelism, beyond community building, worship is the point. Revelation 7 is the destination, where all diverse cultural expressions bring God glory.
Worship fulfills creation's purpose. It shifts focus from the how to the why, the ultimate what for. How do we live this out today?
Through a lifestyle of worship, personal devotion, cultural reflection, empowering local faith communities globally, supporting cross-cultural missions, and consistent global prayer intercession.
So it's this incredible idea that everything we do, our service, our prayers, it all feeds into this beautiful, unified, yet incredibly diverse global song of worship, a symphony praising the Creator.
Exactly. It shifts our focus from just the means to the magnificent end itself.
So, the learner, as we wrap up this deep dive, the core message seems really clear. This vision of global worship isn't about sameness. It's about a powerful unity born from this rich, vibrant diversity. We've looked at its deep scriptural roots, what it means for our connected world today, and the call for each of us to actively join this global chorus.
And that leaves us with a final thought for you to ponder. In your own life, how might you add your unique melody to this amazing unfolding symphony? What's maybe just one small step, something you can do starting today, to grow in cultural sensitivity or to appreciate more deeply the different ways people express faith around you or even in your own community?
It's really an invitation for all of us to think about our own part in this incredible vision and maybe even go back to the source material with some fresh eyes. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.